So not too long ago, right here on the Soul and Stereo Sessions, we had a fun little experiment. We looked back at the Source magazine and all of the albums that they gave their coveted 5 mic review to. It was a big deal to get 5 mics, but I wanted to see if those scores held up and compare their 5 mics to Soul and Stereo's infamous 5 stars. And we went through about maybe half of the list. There are about 45 albums that have received 5 mics from the Source over the years. And we did like maybe 20 or so. I didn't want to do the whole 45 because I got things to do, and so do y'all. So, by popular demand, we're going to do part 2 today. Those other 20-some albums we didn't get to the first time, we're going to see if those 5 mics hold up. Yes, it's 5 mics versus 5 stars, part 2. Let's see if those classics really are the classics they claim to be. To another edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions right here on YouTube. Thank you for joining your boy. And yes, you heard me correctly. Today we are going part 2 of our 5 mics versus 5 star album retrospective. So just a little bit of perspective for those who may have missed the last video. Just a little recap for you. So for those who don't know, or maybe too young, or maybe too old now, Alzheimer's is hitting, the Source magazine was the Bible for hip-hop in the 80s, 90s, and even into the early 2000s. It is the way that we got our news. It is the way that the culture really spread. A lot of times you didn't get, since there was no internet, you were just confined to your radio. So this was a way to learn about what was going on across the hip-hop nation and the world. So it was very important for the culture. And the most coveted prize was to get those 5 mics from the reviewers because it designated your album as a hip hop classic. And that is what we're looking back on today. So, one caveat, because as I mentioned, in Source land, those albums that received 5 mics were considered hip hop classics. Soul and Stereo, when we do our reviews, I don't consider a 5-star review necessarily a classic, because if you look at what a classic is, a classic album isn't just a really good album. A classic is an album that has affected an artist or the genre as a whole over time, and that takes time. I can listen to any album that drops this coming Friday and give it a score, and maybe it's so dope it gets 5 stars due to quality alone. But we won't know if it's a true classic if it changes the culture, if it shapes this artist's career, if it inspires generations of artists down the line. We won't know that the day the album releases. That's impossible. So you can't, in my opinion, call something a classic until time has been removed. So, and we are talking about 5 stars versus 5 mics here. I'm not arguing whether these albums are classic. Most of the albums on this list I would call classic. Not all, but most. Instead, we are talking about quality. 5 mic quality versus 5 star quality. Got it? Cool. One other thing too. So the albums on this list, for the most part, are albums from the 80s. And a lot of these albums were giving 5 mics after the fact. They were not reviewed at the time. So these were the Source going back and making good and being like, okay, this is a classic, this is a classic, this is a classic. So a lot of them weren't reviewed in time. To me, that's always a little funny because you kind of lose the perspective. And a lot of times if you listen to something after the fact and you know it's a classic, you might kind of bump the score up a little bit. But that's neither here nor there. Just something to keep in mind when you see these scores. And for those who aren't familiar with the golden age of hip hop. This will be a great learning opportunity for you because we don't talk enough about the 80s here on this channel. And a lot of the albums we're talking about were the foundation for hip hop today. So get ready for a nice history lesson and a look back at some of the greatest albums of all time. But before we get started, we got to pay some bills. We got to do some housekeeping. If you haven't yet already, hit like on this video right now. Go ahead. I'm going to take a second. I'm pausing, taking a second. All right, cool. You hit like? Cool. Second thing I want you to do is go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Because look, players, I look at my the little algorithm thing. What's the little, the stats? Those little joints, the little bar graphs and charts. And I see how many people watch these videos every week. And half of y'all aren't subscribers. Why not? Just hit the subscribe button. I appreciate it. And once it's done, make sure you share this with a hip-hop fan in your life, whether it's a OG like myself who wants to revisit those days, or if it's a younger fan who wants to learn more about hip-hop and the legends that put on for them and paved the way for now. This is the video to do that. So without any further ado, let's look back at the 20, I think we've got like 21, something like that, 20-something albums that received 5 mics. And let's see how they hold up to those 5 stars. All right, first on the list, well, actually we're going to do a pair of albums from one of the most legendary groups in hip-hop history, Run DMC. First off, we will do the Run DMC debut album. This was my introduction to hip-hop. And not even before I even heard the album. My cousin had a poster of this album on her bedroom wall. And I just thought that these two dudes are like the coolest looking dudes I've ever seen. I had to know more about them. I had to learn about them. And that was really my introduction to hip hop. So of course, because of the legacy of this album, because of the singles it spawned, because of the ground it paved, like this is one of the albums that really started hip hop as we know it today, especially as a mainstream force. This album got 5 mics from the source, but does it get 5 stars from me? Not quite. I go 4.5 on this one. And look, 4.5 stars is an exceptional review, and this is an exceptional album. It's just a couple of the non-singles don't really do it for me, but a great project and a very, very worthy debut for a legendary group, no question. Now let's get to Raising Hell. Oh my gosh, arguably their signature release in my opinion. It is the first album to go platinum, the first one to go multi-platinum in hip-hop. The songs have been sampled to death. Of course it gets 5 mics from the source. What does it get from me? Oh yeah, player, it's getting 5 stars. It is that good. An absolute classic, and not just in terms of legacy, but in terms of just the quality going down, top to bottom. This is an incredible album. This is the Run DMC album, in my opinion, that you gotta hear. All right, next is another landmark album, LL Cool J's Radio. An album that's a perfect launching point for LL's career. Like again, some of y'all might know him as just the actor or the dude that does like the hosting on an award show or something. Like no, LL was that dude. He was the first, in my opinion, got to be the mainstream star, the star that was the crossover star. He had everything. He had the energy, he had the appeal, he had it all. This album really captured that. And I've seen in recent years that this album's kind of gotten a little more of a mixed reception. But at the time, it was considered a 5-star classic, or a 5 mic classic. Is it 5 stars though? Kind of gave myself away, but yes, it is a 5-star classic in my opinion. It still hits hard. It's a legendary album from a legendary rapper, and honestly, one of my favorites from the era of all time. Still holds up. 5 stars all the way around. All right, speaking of more legends, we're going to just keep going to it. Man, it's just crazy the amount of talent we're talking about today. And we're talking about the Beastie Boys, Licensed to Ill. One of the best album titles of all time, in my opinion. And honestly, it was way better than the album title that they were going to go with. We ain't going to talk about that. Google is your friend. Be careful, though. Don't do it in mixed company, because you can get in trouble. However, even though that title would have killed their careers out of the gate probably, what we got here was incredible. I mean, this album is a seminal moment in rap history. It's sampled all over the place. They are so energetic. This is when hip hop was so fun. This album had so much energy. It was so fun. 5 mics from the source. Does it get 5 stars from me though? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This album is, again, part of the foundation of what hip hop would be. And the Beastie Boys are a legendary group, and they made their name right here and there. We don't give them enough love today. Can start doing that right now because this is a classic among classics. Alright, so we're going to talk a little bit now. We're going to take a moment to talk about Boogie Down Productions, who have not one, not two, but 3 projects that got 5 mics from the source. That might be a record. I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments if that's not true. But I can't think of another group that got 3 5-mic scores. I know a couple got 2. I don't know if anybody got 3. And we'll start with the debut, Criminal Minded. This, oh my goodness, this is another highly influential album, and it's funny looking back because Boogie Down would completely change who they were after that, and we'll get to that in a moment. But this album is so hard hitting, one of the kind of broke ground in kind of the gangster rap era. It wasn't the first, but it definitely was one of the more high profile ones. And man, the influence, the creativity, the energy KRS brought with his delivery is something to behold. 5 mics from the source. Soul and Stereo says 5 stars as well. By far my favorite project from them. And that might have spoiled a little bit from later on down the line. But yes, my favorite project from them. Their best project, and one that still holds up today, even though its aggressiveness might have been a little weird at the time. It certainly seems commonplace as to what hip-hop would become years later. Second up is By All Means Necessary with this iconic album cover. So this is the one where KRS-One became a little bit more conscious. The rapper that we know today, aka The Teacher, he kind of decided to get away from the more angry gangster stuff when we lost Scott LaRock and his DJ, and he was like, okay, we're going to use this to be more positive, to reach out and do more teachings. And, you know, this album was very successful at that, clearly, because it got 5 mics. But does it get 5 stars? No, not quite. I like this album a lot. I don't want to be too on the nose here, but it feels like it just lacks the punch. It lacks the energy. It lacks kind of the hard-hittingness that Criminal Minded brought. Still an absolutely great album, just not quite hit the level that I wanted to. Not quite there for me. And then finally, we've got Edutainment. So this album is, once again, another one that got 5 mics, but this one, retroactively, well, let me put it like this. The 2 previous albums got them retroactively. This album received 5 mics in real time. So this album dropped and it got it. It's not like they went back in 2002 and was like, oh yeah, we'll give this 5 mics. This got 5 mics at the moment. So, how does Edutainment hold up? Does it deserve 5 mics? Or what star rating does it deserve? Those 5 mics or deserve the 5 stars? Let's see. No. I don't think this one gets 5 anything at all. Well, and here's why. Some of the bars and thoughts don't age very well. A lot of these 80s albums, when I go back and listen to them, I'm kind of like, there's a lot of cringy moments that you can explore for yourself. And if you know them, you'll know exactly what I mean. Not stuff that really works in 2025. Also, it's just too many skits. It's too many distractions. It wasn't nearly as streamlined as the previous releases. It's good, yes. But to me, it's nowhere near 5 mics, 5 stars, none of that. So this one I'm a little baffled by why it's rated so high. I'm sure someone in the comments will tell me why. But this is clearly a good album. To me, not at all near a top rating at all. Next up is Paid in Full, and I'm sure that even if you're a novice rap fan, you probably have heard of this album from Eric B. and Rakim. This album was so important because it really pioneered the hip-hop that we heard today. Y'all always kill me, like my youngins kill me when they send me these memes that's like, oh, this is what rap used to sound like in the 80s. I'm playing with basketball at the mall. Ha, you said rap was so great back then, it's terrible. First off, homie, like you can't compare something from 40 years in the past to today, of course it's going to sound dated. Second of all, have you heard today's rappers? They sound worse than the basketball in the mall rapping. At least they're putting coherent sentences together. I don't know what the coding fiends are talking about, but let me chill. I won't get on that. However, this album is great because Rakim truly defined lyricism. The way that we celebrate lyricism today is pretty much pioneered by Rakim and another artist we'll get to in a little bit later on. They set the tone for that, and it started here. So absolutely it gets 5 mics. Does it get 5 stars from me? Duh. Yeah, 5 stars. No question. One of the best albums ever. Not gonna find a complaint from me. Another album from the duo that got 5 mics was Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em. And unlike the debut, this is an album that was reviewed in real time, so it got 5 mics in real time. It wasn't one that got tacked on in that 2002 era like a lot of these. So it's another strong release for sure. Super cohesive, super strong. Eric B and Rakim just had incredible chemistry, and Rakim was a monster. 5 mics, but 5 stars. Do we get it? Do we get it? No, not this time. I only go 4.5. And I caught a lot of heat back in the day when I had talked about this album on the Soul and Stereo website. People were like, how you don't know what you're talking about. Damn, of course it gets 5. I'm not saying the album that it's not bad, y'all. The album is good. The album's very good. It just doesn't hit as hard to me. It doesn't have kind of the memorable moments that the previous album had. It's just a good album. 4.5, like, you can't hate on that. I just can't go all the way. If you think it's 5, dope. To me, just a little hair below. Up next is Public Enemy, and It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. I've heard this called the greatest rap album of all time. And while I disagree, not in Nasir Jones's internet, but I do think that for sure, maybe if you want to make the case for number 2, man, it's absolutely up there. It is a revolution, if you want to call it, a revolution in music. A powerful testimony to black experiences, the black way of life. This album is so powerful, and its themes drive us, especially in today's world. It means so much. 5 mics, of course. 5 stars? Of course. Of course. I mean, look, I would give Fear of a Black Planet 5 stars too, and they didn't even give that 5 mics. So they tripping there. I think both of those are 5-star projects. An incredible album from an incredible group. No questions asked. We ain't arguing about this one. Next up is Big Daddy Kane. Long live the Kane. Long live the Kane. If you are not up on Big Daddy Kane, you should be. Because if it was not for this man, your favorite rapper would not have a favorite rapper. He is a blueprint for a lot of the MCs that we celebrate today. Your favorite rap moguls, all this stuff, this lover man personality who's still smooth with it, and yeah, that was all Big Daddy Kane. Absolutely, that was him. So there's a lot of people that are built off of his DNA. And I love this album so much because of his charisma. This is another album. A lot of these albums on this list, if you listen to them now, they do feel dated, obviously. Like, they're of their time. They do feel a little dated. So if you were born 30 years before this drop, hip-hop, you probably aren't used to hip-hop sounding like that. Long Live the Kane, though, does not sound that removed from modern hip-hop. I think you would kind of be like, okay, this one sounds like something that could come out in, like, the 90s. It's much more, or even the 2000s. Like, you could hear a lot of the elements because it's so influential. And that man's flow is just so easy, so smooth. Kane is a monster. We do not talk about that enough. But what we are going to talk about is these 5 mics. 5 mics for this project, of course. But does it get 5 stars? Yep, it gets 5 stars. It's a timeless album to me and one of my favorites from the 80s. This one, Radio, maybe a couple others. To me, those are like my core 80s hip-hop joints. Very dope. Time for another group that does not get enough love in 2025. I'm talking about Critical Beatdown from the Ultramagnetic MCs. Oh my goodness. This album did so much to push hip-hop in new directions. So at the time, again in the 80s, you got to judge it differently. Like a lot of hip hop kind of sounded the same because it was just growing and evolving, and there wasn't 74 different offshoots of what hip hop sounded like. There was, you know, it was just kind of, it was incubating. But this album really sounded different at the time, and you could really tell. It had Kool Keith and his lyrical dexterity. Said G had the stream of consciousness flow that was even well before Wayne and them that we celebrate now. He was doing it first. And best of all, these tracks just go so hard. It's just such a fun listen, and everybody was just at it. They were just clicking on all cylinders. There's a reason why I have the songs on this album. If you've never heard of this album, I guarantee you've heard the songs, because half the album were singles. Half the singles dropped. There's a reason for that. 5 mics from the source, but does it get 5 stars from Soul and Stereo? Sure does. I give it 5 stars. It's another album that isn't just a historical piece to be sitting in a museum. It's dope, it's fun, it's innovative, and it's just a joy to listen to. You can just you can celebrate it on the historical aspect, and then it's just a fun album to listen to, and it ages so well. Absolutely a 5-star project. Now let's go to the debut of the Jungle Brothers with Straight Out of the Jungle. So the Jungle Brothers were kind of the debut for the native tongues, the ones that gave us Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, Black Sheep, that whole group. And the first one to come out of the gate were the Jungle Brothers. So if you are familiar with those groups, you will be familiar with this sound. It's that same sound that would define an era, but really they were the ones that started it before things really kicked off big in the 90s for those other groups. So even just because of the ground it paved and the shift in tone, I think that's what gives it its 5 mic rating so solidly from the source. 5 stars from Soul and Stereo though? No, I'm gonna go 4.5. Sometimes the production to me isn't as fine-tuned throughout as we would get in the Tribe projects. Sometimes a little too silly. Like there were some unfocused moments for me. When it was clear and present, it was dope. But there were a few times it was a little off base. Those are nitpicks, of course. Can't hate on a 4.5 review. Great project. It's a must listen for sure. Up next is EPMD with Strictly Business. That 1987, 1988 run of hip hop was insane. You see why they call it the golden era. It was just crazy. The Green Eyed Bandit, Can't Stand It. Eric Sermon, Paris Smith, they just came out of the gate with this great debut. And it's not as heavy as some of the ones we talked about earlier, like Public Enemy and Boogie Down. Like, no, this album was fun. It was fun, and they had such a great time sampling. This is another album that really set this tone of how sampling would work. Like, the way they sampled tracks you can see those elements today. Like, they paved the ground for that, and you can see the work and the elements there. Plus, EPMD just knew how to ride a beat. They would just ride a beat so expertly. 5 mics from the source. 5 stars from Soul and Stereo, though? Yep. I would give it 5. Honestly, when it comes to EPMD albums, I can be very hot and cold on them. I like them. I like their singles. The albums don't always do it for me. This album does it for me. This one I think deserves the top score. And now we hit what many say the greatest storyteller in the history of hip hop. Slick Rick, The Adventures of Slick Rick. Honestly, who's gonna argue with him? Who's better at telling stories than the Ruler? I can't think of anybody. He is the guy. He is the blueprint when it comes to storytelling rap. And this album is proof of that. This is one of those projects that even if you have never heard a Slick Rick album, even if you barely know who Slick Rick is, I bet you know half the songs on this project. It is such a great, legendary collection of just wild stories and silliness. And again, back when hip hop was fun. It didn't take itself as seriously. Sometimes I wish it would take itself a little bit more seriously today, but that's another reason. This was a happy medium for that. So, even if you're a rap novice, you understand this album, and its legacy is so profound. Slick Rick, one of the greatest ever. He just dropped an album recently, and it wasn't bad. So he's still doing it today. 5 mics easily. Easily. 5 stars, though? Easily, yes, 5 stars. I mean, I don't even know what to say about this one. Another landmark release in hip hop. 5 stars, no questioning. No notes, as the children say. No notes. All right, let's travel over to the West Coast for a few West Coast projects. And we're going to start with one that everybody knows, NWA, Straight Outta Compton. One of the most infamous albums of all time. I know the biopic did a lot to kind of set the stage for that. And I'm glad it did because it helped kind of set the importance of what this album brought. And without it, I don't think that it would have received the notoriety it gets today. I remember when that movie dropped and I had written some previous stuff about Eazy-E and NWA on my site. All of a sudden I started getting all these comments on these old posts. I'm like, okay, people are finding stuff because they're researching and learning about NWA. This is one of those albums I feel like you had to be there because they were so controversial. It was so much hysteria. You were not allowed to wear NWA t-shirts at my school. You couldn't. But the reason why the music was so great, not only because it was controversial and enticing and like taboo, but also they were just so talented and the stories they were telling. They really were a mirror of the streets of LA, Compton at that time. Like it was some serious stuff, and it brought to light what was really going on in a lot of our inner cities that were being ignored. So, what do we get? 5 mics from the source, easily. But 5 stars from me? Easily, for sure. One of the most important albums of all time. Its legacy is strong and profound. Every MC and member of it has gone on to do great things. And it all started with this one. An incredible moment for hip-hop. And even though it was controversial, it was very needed. Now, let's go to one of the greatest what-ifs of hip-hop history with the DOC, No One Can Do It Better. Oh man, the DOC, we really thought he was up next. Like, we thought that he was going to go down as one of the best ever because this man's flow was like magical. His delivery was incredible. This is another one of those albums that if you listen to today, it sounds like it could have dropped today. Except the talent is so incredible. You're like, nobody's rapping like this today. But the way it's constructed feels very modern. Unfortunately, for those who don't know, the DOC was in a car accident, crushed his throat, changed his voice forever, completely derailed his momentum. He didn't have another project for like almost a decade after it, so all of the momentum and goodwill that was built with the first one was totally gone by the time he returned to the scene. Such a sad story, but we will always have this project. 5 mics, 5 stars though? Yes, 5 stars, it comes from me. It's one of the greatest hidden gems of the late 80s. I love it. I always call DOC kind of the West Coast equivalent of AZ. Just this incredible MC that just, I feel like in another timeline, he would be one of the greatest ever. But what we got was just so incredible. 5 stars for sure. And another legendary and controversial release with Ice Cube and the Death Certificate. So, this one was originally rated 4.5 mics by the source. They upgraded it to 5 mics at some point. I don't know. Like I said, they like to make sure that all the classics have 5 mics. So they're like, okay, it's a classic now. Let's give it an extra soul. Kind of weird, but it's cool. I have no problem with people upgrading their reviews. I do it sometimes too. Another legendary release from a rapper who at the time was like the scariest man in America. You can laugh. You can be like, I don't believe you. Whatever, it's the truth. People were terrified of Ice Cube because he was so intense. Before he became like this movie star and kid-friendly dude, he was that dude. And he was just rapping with the intensity, and he just had so much to say. Whether it was racial profiling, gun ownership, drug abuse, blackness in America. He talked about it and talked about it in such a frank way that even the podcast, your favorite podcaster, he would go places they wouldn't go. He was so unapologetic, and it just shined in the music. 5 mics from the source. 5 stars from me? Yes, 5 stars from me. I'm glad the source upgraded that 4.5 because I think it deserves the 5. I don't even know why they left the point off. Man, give them the point. 5 stars, 5 mics. This is another one of the best to ever come out of the West. Up next is One For All from Grand Nubian. This is another one of the albums on the list that was not a redo like most of them on this list are. This one got 5 mics out of the gate. And it was another one of those socially charged projects that started to kick off the 90s, because I know the 90s is known as like the gangster era and then like the bling era. Like that would be later on down the timeline before we got to the flashiness. Early 90s was all about the consciousness, and they helped drive that forward. Sadat X, Puba, Lord Jamal, they were always very socially conscious, but they also very funny too. Like they were very entertaining in their bars. So it was a great time. It was also an album where you could learn something. 5 mics from the source, 5 stars for me. No, y'all, I only give this one like 4. And look, again, a 4-star review is not bad. I'm not saying don't come for me. Don't come for me, Brand Nubian. Don't get me. I'm not saying this is bad. But I never got the overarching love for this one. It is a very strong project for sure. There's some silliness that is a little too goofy for me. Even in the 90s, there was some stuff I was like, eh. And of course, there are some things that don't necessarily age too well that happens in a lot of these early 80s and early 90s projects. However, it's a very strong album. I think it's a must listen, especially for hip-hop historians who want to go back. But I think it's a good album. I just don't think it's an exceptional, genre-defying classic in that terms. But it's very dope. Probably their best album, I would say. But, you know, a good joint. Everything can't be classic to me, y'all. Just a good album. Next up is Breaking Atoms from Main Source. This is another one that originally got 4.5 and they upgraded to 5. I kind of hate the legacy of this album in some way, because I feel like the only reason people talk about this album is because of Nas and Live at the Barbecue, and people just talk about how great that was. And we hear a little bit about Large Professional and his production, but it's almost always about the Nas song. Dude, there's more good stuff on this album than one Nas song. That Nas song is great. Yes, you hear that. If you hear that song and you're like, this dude is just rapping at a level it's like someone got a rapper from the future and dropped him here, because he just sounds so unworldly compared to everybody else. So we knew Nas was going to be a big deal. But we are here to talk about Main Source. Nas was just a guest feature. And that album was great. This is a great album, great production, and the other members absolutely holding on. They're super dope. So the Source went from 4.5 to 5 on their mics. What do I do with my stars? I think the Source had it right the first time. I would say this one gets 4.5 instead of 5. It's a great album, absolutely, but again, it's one of those ones that don't hit that upper echelon of 5 to me. I enjoy it a lot, even besides the Nas feature. I enjoy that too, but I enjoy it a lot. I don't think it's that engrossing to get the full Monty from me, though. Great album, though. Very underrated. You should check it out. All right, and this is the last one on the list, y'all, and this one's going to be interesting. Grip It on that other level, the Ghetto Boys. So this one has an interesting backstory, because if you remember the previous list, the Ghetto Boys, of course, is the group that introduced many of us to Scarface. So Scarface had a couple of albums on the previous list that got 5 mics. I didn't agree with those 5 mic scores, and Scarface fans were not happy with me. Look, y'all, I love Face. I love Face. Face is dope. But those albums I just didn't agree with giving them 5. So this is my chance to get it right, I guess, because this is Ghetto Boys. They got 5 mics. So what am I going to do? Well, first, let's set the stage. This album originally got 4 mics, and then it got upgraded to 5, and has since been celebrated as one of the greatest albums in Southern hip-hop history. I agree that it is one of those albums that has helped define Southern hip-hop in a way. And yes, when it comes to actual quality, Face isn't the rapper that we would know him as today, but he absolutely set the seeds. Like he was absolutely started to show, in my opinion, here. His aggressiveness, his energy, his delivery, he just had the full package. And everybody, not just him, everybody brought their own personal chemistry and personas to this project, and it made it feel very diverse. So, 5 mics. Does it get 5 stars? Am I going to get out the doghouse? Nope, I'm still in the doghouse. I think the source had it right the first time. I would go 4 on this. Yeah, y'all. Look. Again, the same argument I'm making on a lot of these tracks. Some of these tracks don't age well at all, y'all. I am no shrinking violent. I won't say I'm not against that more violent aspects of hip hop. I think that it's a storytelling device. I don't think that when you look at an album like NWA, they're talking about what they're seeing. And I think it's important for history to categorize and chronicle what you're seeing in your lifetime. There's a difference between glorifying and reporting almost. So I'm not against violence in hip hop. There's some stuff in here that goes a little bit too far. And I'm just like, eh. And again, it's not just me being an old head. Even back in the day, I was just like, that's a little too much. But a project overall, I'm not going to hate on a 4-star rating. I understand why they upgraded the score. To me, just doesn't go all the way. Some is a little too goofy. There's some consistency issues. There's some pacing issues with sequencing. And like I said, some of the stuff just doesn't age that well. A good album. Absolutely think that you should check it out, especially if you're a Scarface fan and you've never seen it. Or if you just want to understand the evolution of Southern hip-hop. Yeah, for sure. Check this thing out. It's worth it. Just don't think it's a top-tier album, in my opinion. Sorry, Face fans. Alright, players, we did it. Can't believe it, but we did it. Over 2 videos, we looked at every single album that received 5 mics from the source and saw how those star ratings held up. And I think overall, I mostly agree. In most cases, I think that I understand why they got it. And if I don't agree, I understand why they went all the way. And we might have been off by there was a lot of 4.5s instead of 5s from my end. But most of the time, yeah, I think the source got it right. Now, in the later years, we got really weird, but that's why the source's legacy took a hit later on. Got weird down the line. However, overall, I think this is great. Every single album that we mentioned, I think you should check it out, especially if you're a hip-hop historian and you want to understand where hip-hop has grown from. I think all of these albums need to be on your list. But now it's your turn, because I know y'all got opinions on this one. Which albums did I underrate? Or you know I'm going to hear it, so let me know in the comments. Just be nice, behave, have a little bit of decorum. Don't wild out too much. I don't want to have to delete me. I never delete comments. Well, actually, I do delete comments if you're too crazy. But just act like you got some sense your mama gave you. It'd be good. This edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions is a wrap. I wish I had 5 more of these so I could really have it set up. Actually, now I think about it, I'm sure some smart ass is going to be like, oh, this YouTube channel only should get 1 mic. That's why you're holding 1 mic. Oh, okay, I made your dumb joke for you. You happy? You happy? Ugh. Whatever. Play on, players.